home. We are trained professionals. We're going to go through the agenda for the BoCC meeting this afternoon and one for next week, and then through the Board of Health agenda for next week, November 5th as well. But we're going to start with introductions. And sorry to make you jump up and down, Keely. After introductions, before we get to the agendas, we'll do a homeless strategy update. I'm John Hutchings, Chair of the Board, and this is
Ty Menser, District 3.
Thomasina Cooper, Commissioner Menser's Assistant.
Anita Bolmar, Clerk of the Board.
Robin Gordon, Gary Edwards' Office.
Robin Campbell, Assistant County Manager.
Romero Chavez, County Manager.
and support.
Katie Johnson, Commissioner Romero's Assistant. Megan Porter, Public Information.
Thank you. And now I'll ask Keely to come up to give us a homeless strategies update.
If I'm 15 minutes, Commissioner, on the
Please.
update.
Yes, at the max.
Probably do it faster. Good morning, Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services, Thurston County's Homeless Prevention and Affordable Housing Coordinator. Lots of positive things have happened in the last week. One of which was I was able to present at the Washington City's Insurance Authority for a Preparing for Emergency Encampments presentation, all-day training that occurred. I was able to present on our system and our efforts that we've attempted for a regional response. It was received very well, so that was really positive. And then lots of excellent information on Boise versus Martin, and then a lot of reporting out for local or for regional staff from Lacey and Olympia. So Rick Walk from City of Lacey was able to present on Lacey's efforts, and Colin DeForest was able to present on what's going on in the City of Olympia. So it was a really excellent opportunity for our county to be representing the homeless crisis response system, our emergency mitigation efforts to multiple counties. There were people from Grace Harbor and Richland and Lakewood there to learn that day. So very excellent work.
This was AWC, or it was?
It was the Washington City's Insurance Authority put it on.
Oh, okay.
The Washington or American Planning Association initially had one of these up in Bellingham in May. And so Patty Crane from the Washington City's Insurance Authority was present at that May training, as was I, and she wanted to make sure we could recreate it down here in our neck of the woods as well. So it was really excellent.
Beautiful.
I talked to somebody who was there, and they said somebody named Ted, I can't get the last name, but
Ted Kelleher?
Yeah, had a wealth of information, data from a state
Absolutely.
source about causes of homelessness, and I don't know what else you might have learned.
I brought all of those slides with me to discuss when we talk about the 5-year plan. So
Okay.
yeah. Another exciting development in the hazardous weather response. We met on Friday, the Hazardous Weather Task Force, to discuss the upcoming season, which begins officially on the 1st, so this Friday, when 3 of our shelter providers who are contracted to offer extra beds will be offering those extra beds. We'll have up to 106 extra beds starting on Friday night. However, as I'm sure you've noticed, it's been below freezing for the last several nights and will continue to be so until Thursday. And so Interfaith, I had a meeting with Pastor Amy from First Christian Church, and she offered 50 extra cold weather beds for the next 3 days, starting last night. And so a combined effort of Interfaith Works, First Christian Church, Salvation Army, and Union Gospel Mission pulled together, and myself, pulled together an operation with blankets and mats that were being offered from Union Gospel Mission and Salvation Army for this pop-up shelter. Interfaith Works is contracted with us to offer extra staffing for these kinds of events. So Interfaith Works staff are they're staffing that pop-up shelter, and by 9 p.m. they had 26 people staying in the shelter, which is really not bad for having about 2 hours of playtime for folks to get the word out that there were extra beds. So that's very positive. We're really excited for that partnership, primarily of our faith community stepping up and offering those beds. So that's good news. And then yesterday I had a conversation over the phone with Governor Jay Inslee's assistant, Jim Baumgarten, I believe, and he was calling to discuss shelter and strategic plan at the state level and whether the the Washington State would like to, or if they should include shelter in their strategic plan, because currently it does not. And then there was a spontaneous lunch, and so I was invited to have lunch with Governor Inslee to talk about our system and to make recommendations for the state, what we think that we need to see happening down in Thurston County and across the state. I was joined by Carrie Retlin and Anna Schlecht from the City of Olympia, Mayor Cheryl Selby, Trish Gregory from Family Support Center, and Trudy Stuckup from Homes First. So it was an excellent, very spontaneous opportunity. We had about a 30-minute warning before
Wow.
having to confirm and meet the governor down at Mercado's for lunch. It was an awesome opportunity, so.
Boy, very nice.
Yes.
Did anything hopeful or substantive come out of that?
There was some discussion, a lot of ideas around ways to increase density, to offer more single-room occupancy units, micro units, some really excellent ideas around brown sites, which are, I believe, I don't know if I got the term correctly, but the abandoned, like strip malls and whatnot, retail spaces, innovative things that are happening in Wisconsin and other parts of the country that are turning those into affordable housing because they're already zoned for density and they're already on bus lines, et cetera. So had good conversations about that, talked about the state is experiencing exactly what we're experiencing here, which is a bulk of people who are unsheltered and a dearth of affordable housing units, and that tension between what do we prioritize in terms of funding, some suggestions of how the state might be able to subsidize some shelter in all communities somehow, and some recommendations around that the state include shelter within their strategic plan and perhaps include that as a requirement for all affordable housing plans. So a lot of conversation and recommendations. It was good.
Very
When
good.
it comes to SROs, what is the main, is it a problem of zoning?
I think it's almost entirely a problem of zoning, and then public not wanting, like the missing middle being such a contentious issue in the city of Olympia, just a concern about way of life shifting. If we move towards more multifamily units in various areas that are zoned for single families and that sort of thing.
Very good. Anything further?
That's about it.
Any other questions?
No?
Thank you,
Right.
Keely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now we're going to get into reviewing this afternoon's draft agenda for October 29, 2019. And we'll convene the meeting at 2 o'clock. Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Menser.
Do we have Commissioner Edwards out all day?
Yeah,
he's
he's
out.
out,
He's
ill today, yeah.
And then approval of the agenda and the minutes from last week's meeting. Then we move into presentations and introduction of new Commissioner's Office employees.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Good morning. We'll be introducing Katie Johnson this afternoon. She's sitting here on the bench. She joined us 2 weeks ago as the executive assistant to the county manager.
Good. And you're still here.
Still here. I think I'll stay for a little while.
Good, thank you. Then we move into an opportunity for the public to address the board.
I don't have any particular updates or
Okay.
intel, perhaps.
Excuse me, okay. And then the county manager's update, follow-up.
Yes, I don't have any particular follow-up on any particular citizens' comments. However, I will be highlighting at the end of the month of October, I will be highlighting some of the achievements that each department has accomplished in the last month. And I will try to do that at the end of every month from this point forward.
Oh, very nice, okay. Then we get to agenda item number 3, the consent items A, B, and C. The first one is human resources. Just removal of 3 members of the Citizens Commission on the Salary.
Yes, Commissioners, for your consideration is for you to consider removing 3 members from the Thurston County Citizens Commission and Salaries and for elected officials. RCW 36.17024 states that no member of the commission, any member, should be removed unless is for cause of incapacitation, incompetence, neglect of duty, or malfeasance. Also, Thurston County Code 2.118060 states that no member shall be removed from his or his term of office unless for cause of incapacitation, incompetence, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. So in this past year, District 2 Representative Mr. Jason Houston and Ms. Rachel Morris of District 3, as well as Mr. John Christensen, have not attended any of the meetings during 2019. So as a result, they have not been able to form a quorum, and as a result of that, you have a public hearing this afternoon to consider changing the code. The state law allows every jurisdiction to form a salary commission. That is not mandated. You have the option. The county formed, I believe, in early 2000s, a salary commission that includes 10 members, that is stated by law. But also the county code states that you need to have an affirmative vote of at least 6 members, in which they will be providing recommendations to the board for salary adjustments for all the elected officials, includes the county commissioners. When that recommendations come to you as a board of county commissioners, you do have the option to accept, change, or not accept the salary recommendations for all other elected officials. You as a board of county commissioners do not have the option to do any of those actions related to your salary. So you just accept the recommendations of the salary commission. This year, they have been meeting, and they have been meeting only a quorum of 5. So that creates an issue. So in this particular items for you to consider removing those 3 members from the salary commission, that will be Mr. Jason Houston, Ms. Rachel Morris, and Mr. John Christensen. That way would allow the board to seek any other citizens who would like to participate on the salary commission and go through that appointment.
Okay, questions or comments?
Not on this piece.
Sorry for the long dissertation.
No, that's fine, it needs explaining. That's 3A. 3B is the treasurer, tax title, property.
Yes, Commissioners. This item was before you, I would say maybe a month ago, where the treasurer has gone through the process trying to surplus a tax title property. So tax title property, just for the viewing audience, is those properties they have been faulting in paying property taxes. So those are delinquent properties that have not paid property taxes. So as a result of that, the county takes into custody. The county does not own those properties, just take into custody on behalf of the citizens of the county. And there is many different ways as to how those tax title property can be disposed of, meaning they will go back into the tax roll. Last year, the Board of County Commissioners authorized, give the authority to the county treasurer to start surplusing those properties, either by an open bid process or an auction, or just surplusing with individual negotiations. The county treasurer has been extremely proactive in surplusing those tax title properties, and this particular item came to your attention, again, maybe a month ago, where the treasurer would like to have an open bid on this particular parcel. And this is located along Cooper Point Road, is 1.3 acres, and it appears that this particular parcel is buildable. You have a follow-up briefings with the treasurer as well with the CPED, and last month you agreed to move forward with this item and have authorized the treasurer to go ahead and have an open bid process. The starting bid of this parcel will be $28,200, and we'll just have to see how the best bidder will win in terms of surplusing this property.
Okay. Any questions?
No, we had 2 lengthy briefings with the treasurer, and I'm satisfied this is the right approach.
Agreed. Okay, so that takes us to 3C, which is the Auditor Financial Services, the voucher list. Did you have any questions? Or
No, I went through that.
I've got, I think, 3 questions, but I'll address it after this meeting, because it just, what's this mean? What does these initials mean, acronyms? And we can meet after this for about 3 minutes. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, we're jumping into the departments now, is Public Health and Social Services and the Homeless Crisis Response Plan adoption.
Yes, Commissioners, for your consideration. The 5-year homeless housing plan, that's a requirement by the Department of Commerce, and the board adopted the plan back in June 2018, and we're in the process of updating this plan. And that will be the requirement under Substitute House Bill 2163. Keely has given you a few briefings related to this particular plan. She has been reaching out to local jurisdictions, and as also she has put in perspective that perhaps this is a fluid plan. Whatever you decide to approve today, it really is a plan that needs to be continually modified depending on the conditions that we face here in the county. But Keely is here to give you additional perspective on that item.
Morning again, Keely Marino from Public
Are
Health
you
and
on the
Social
agenda
Service.
later on again?
I can be, I mean. I have today the final version of the plan as we have it. There's been one correction that I can get you that copy, which is just a subtitle above a section on veterans, the Veterans Hub in Lacey. But other than that, there's been no further changes since you've received this plan. I also included in my documents the local plan guidelines to make sure that it's very clear, the language from the state, what the requirements were for this plan and what was to be included in this plan, highlighting that that this plan must be consistent with the Commerce's state guidelines and Commerce's 5-year homeless housing strategic plan that they have. So I know that there's been a lot of comment, and I wanted to make sure that we have an understanding of what is this plan in terms of its prescription. Like, what are we prescribed to address within the plan? What are we not prescribed to address within the plan? What are Commerce's guidelines? What are the best practices that must be addressed within the plan? What is the process that must be gone through in order to publish this plan, which is all in those local plan guidelines, which was included. I also have a Derek Harris, who's the chair of the Homeless Housing Hub. Derek Harris, it's a requirement from the Consolidated Homeless Grant and the Department of Commerce that our local continuum of care vote affirmatively in adoption of this plan. And Derek Harris will be here this afternoon as the chair to affirm, yes, the Homeless Housing Hub did approve the plan. So we've met that criteria. And I'm just open to any questions that you might have upon your reading of this plan, the guidance, data, what have you about the plan.
Questions or comments?
So the last plan was, I think, submitted, I want to say July 2018, and now and that's because we were late. I'm just trying to make sure I got this. We were late on that, and so the update didn't get delayed. It was due at the time it was due, which is why we're doing this now. Do I have that right?
Yes, and there have been some communities that finalized their homeless housing plan, such as the one that we adopted in June 2018. They had their final adopted in 2018 as well, and they were still required to amend the plan.
Right.
So, yeah, and it was a brand-new plan that had just been written, so
what is can you kind of just concisely, what is the difference between the update and the plan from June of 2018 that folks might have looked at more carefully?
So the homeless housing plan, well, first of all, the name is different. So the 2018 plan that was adopted was titled and called the Homeless Housing Plan. So within that plan, there were goals such as reaching functional zero within the veterans community, which we've almost nearly done with the homeless housing hub, the Lacey Veterans Hub, as well as the Drexel Veterans Housing that came into effect before the adoption, I think, actually. And then it had a strong emphasis on building affordable housing and kind of some strategies that were just maintain the current system as it is. Well, when that plan was adopted, our point-in-time count for unsheltered individuals hovered in 2016 and 2017 between 124 and 168 unsheltered individuals. So between 2017 and our PIT count in 2019, it's doubled, and our point-in-time count for unsheltered individuals was 394. So I believe the state was acknowledging that there's in fact, entitling it the Homeless Crisis Response Plan rather than the Homeless Housing Plan, acknowledging that the level of unsheltered individuals in our state is astronomical, and we've got to develop some strategies and objectives to move people from an unsheltered environment into the system. So the objectives were very clearly laid out. They did 3 updates. They started in December of 2018. They had an update in February of 2019, and then again in March 2019, which was their final objective update.
You're talking about commerce.
Yes, commerce, yes.
So it's not just that, it sounds like the actual requirements have changed since the earlier plan.
Yes.
It's not just updating what you already did.
Correct.
And in terms of the structure of it, and, in terms of how it's laid out with, strategies and, goals, measurable, did any of that, was any of that changed by Department of Commerce, how the plan had to be structured?
Well, the plan, I have a phone call with their technical assistance team, and she highly recommended, because this will be run through a rubric through Commerce, it'll be graded essentially on whether it meets the criteria. And so there was I had rearranged some of the order of the objectives initially, and they absolutely recommended it must be structured in the order. The objectives must go in the order that Commerce has laid them out. There must be this language and there must be this language. So there were some very prescriptive ways in which the plan was to be structured. However, not the narrative. I just decided to create a longer context for our county in terms of history of homelessness in the nation, as well as locally in the last couple of years. So I added those things.
You differentiated this between this and the homeless housing plan.
Yes.
Is different. And when you say this is going to be published with Commerce, published sounds so final.
Oh.
Is this not flexible or organic enough where it can be amended or changed?
It's absolutely, I should not have used the word published, I apologize.
That's okay.
The Commerce has been very clear that when we submit the plan to them, it will go through the process of Commerce looking over all the contents and giving us feedback, by which we would perhaps have to make some corrections or some adjustments. And then in all of their guidance, they have said, this is a living document. It is anticipated that it will be amended as time goes on, depending on circumstances within each individual local continuum.
Perfect. I just want the public to hear that again.
Absolutely.
That this is a very high level philosophical in nature. These have to be met, these certain criteria the Commerce puts out, and we're meeting that. It's not to the level of detail. And we've been receiving email and comment, this should be in the plan, but it's all detailed type stuff, and that's not the appropriate document or vehicle for that.
There is a lot of detail and specific strategies
Right.
within the work plan. I really made an attempt not to be duplicative, and so in many of the comments around substance use and mental health, there are plans that are in existence that we are aligning with, such as the opioid task or response plan that we're in alignment with, as well as the affordable housing piece. So we will support the implementation of local jurisdictions in their affordable housing plans, rather than making this a 600-page document.
Right.
And then also, I brought an extra copy of the slides from Ted Kelleher from the Department of Commerce, if you'd like to look at them. They're very in-depth around the causes of homelessness in Washington State, as well as what's not the cause, some of the myths out there about what is going on with regards to homelessness. It was incredibly rich information. And I brought that because I just happened to grab an extra copy so that I could bring it here to you.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Another one of the small myths is that a myth is that people have the perception that homeless teenagers are just runaways.
Right.
And they're not. The majority of them have adult family they're living with, but they're homeless. Anyway, so yeah, I'd love to see a copy of that.
Great.
Want one?
Yes, the person that I spoke with who had been there was one of the prosecuting attorneys whose, and her takeaway was that she thought that the data was, really instructive, that it's a lot of, it's not, the explosion of homelessness hasn't really been some kind of explosion of mental health and substance abuse issues. It's been market forces driving housing prices and has really been a driving factor. And she said there was a wealth of data backing that conclusion up. Was that your takeaway?
That was my takeaway, and one of the things that Mr. Kelleher stated was Thurston County is doing very well. We are growing rapidly. Our wage and housing prices are, I can't remember that it's in here, but it would take me a minute to flip through, that we are one of the fastest growing communities in the United States. So with that comes an influx of people, which can therefore increase rent, and a lot of the increase in rent is completely correlative with high wages, because in Thurston County, our wages are a little bit higher. That it directly impacts rental increases.
Well, that comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility, too. Yes, sir.
Also, Keely, can you speak about the adoption process? Meaning the plan for consideration today, the commissioners may adopt the plan, but also local jurisdictions will have to go through a formal adoption of the plan as well. Is that correct?
That is not my understanding. My understanding is that they had to have the opportunity to make comment.
And
Yes.
you have reached out to each of the jurisdictions to
Yes.
provide comments, right?
Yes, I have spoken with and presented to Lacey, Tumwater. I did bring it to Yelm. I also sent the plan on to Bucota and to Tenino and Rainier so that they had the opportunity to invite me to come down or read the plan or make comment, and I haven't heard anything back from them at this point, but I did receive some comments from Tumwater and from Lacey and Olympia, and those were addressed through conversation, and also some additions were added to the plan, such as making sure that the Lacey Veterans Hub is called out for their preventative work, and that was a comment from and recommendation from the city of Lacey, so that was added.
I'm really glad to hear that the Continuum of Care Homeless Housing Hub is involved in terms of needing to approve, because I consider those the experts in our community in this area. So that's great that they have been involved in this process and vetted this plan.
Absolutely.
It gives me a greater sense of confidence.
And also, in the past week, we received 2 comments from 2 citizens related to the plan. I don't know how I can characterize those comments, but they were related to the plan itself. I believe one was asking for a little more detail. As you heard from Keely, the plan is a little bit high level. And the other one, I believe, it was more a philosophical approach to the homeless crisis as a whole.
I think that generally the comments are around characterizing the plan not addressing mental health and substance abuse issues as a perception of that being the driving cause of homelessness, but the data shows that that is not true. In fact, there's a slide in here that demonstrates that nationally, with the decrease, there's actually a decrease in unsheltered homelessness nationally. So in the big picture, there's an increase here, but that with this decrease in unsheltered homelessness over the last couple of years, there's been a sharp increase in opioid use. But in Washington State, with a high increase in unsheltered individuals, we've had a very slow, very incremental incline of opioid use, which is way below the national standard, way below. So Washington State's doing quite well. And in fact, Washington State as a whole is ranked 9th in terms of its response to homelessness in the United States. So Washington's doing quite well.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, the point you made earlier is worth repeating for that comment, which is that folks may not understand that the opioid task force response plan is sort of incorporated by reference rather than repeated.
Right.
And therefore, it's a coordinated strategy that does not ignore the importance of strategies related to substance abuse.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a recognized connection. It's just not in the plan,
Yes.
printed up in there.
On behalf of Commissioner Edwards, who's out today, Robin, do you have any questions that he may have asked? Okay, thank you. That takes care of 4A. Now 4B
Thank you.
is Yeah, thank you, Keely. I'm sorry. Thank
Oh,
you very
you're
much.
fine. My pleasure.
I'm just used to staying. Next is Department of Health Consolidated Contract.
Yeah, Commissioners, you reviewed this item last week. In this, for your consideration is to approve amendment number 10 to the State of Washington Department of Health Consolidated Contract by increasing the contract by $1,256,293 with a revised total amount of $3,421,489 for the duration of January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2020. This amendment adds statements of work for emergency preparedness and response, childhood-led poisoning prevention, functional public health services, and national estuary pollution prevention, as well as ID and corrections programs. Also, in addition to adding new statements of work, they amend statements of work related to maternal and child health block grant, drinking water for Group A and B, and tobacco and vapor products prevention and control programs. And the Director of Public Health, Shirley Sliders, here, if you have any questions.
All right. Have you any questions?
Just a comment. I know this has come up on a couple of things in the past. Like, there's nothing in the wording of this that gives the public any concept of what this is about at all.
Yeah.
So if we could just throw in a couple of words that, at least so the subject matter of the contract that's my suggestion. I remember Commissioner Edwards and I agreed on that.
Yeah, I look at it too, and I
weeks
work in,
ago.
what was this one about?
Yeah.
Well, and it is always a fine line whether you will have a motion that is this long or this short, but we'll
But
add
he's
some
reading the
additional
motion, so
information.
Yeah.
that's fine with me.
We'll work on that.
But that would be great, put a framework around it. Thank you. 4C, setting a public hearing for the CAPER.
This is a new item. You did have the chance to review this last week. For your consideration is to set the public hearing for November 26, 2019 at 3 in the afternoon in this room for you to hear public testimony related to the 2018 Housing and Urban Development Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. This is a yearly action the commissioners need to take. The 2018 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, also known as CAPER of Thurston County, is an annual summary report explaining how federal community development grant programs, also known as the CDBG, and home funds were expanded in the program year of 2018. So this particular report covers the period of September 1st, 2018 through August 31st, 2019. That will be the federal fiscal year. And again, this is the annual report, and it's required for you to hold a public hearing before this is submitted to the feds.
All right. Nothing? Okay. Thank you. That takes us to agenda item number 5, Public Works, adopting an amendment to a chapter regarding apprentice requirements.
Thank you, Commissioners. For your consideration is for you to approve changes to Thurston County Code 15.20, which is related to apprenticeship percentages. And this proposal will change the apprentice percentages from 10 to 15%. For public works projects, they are $1 million and above. You held on June 25th, 2018, you directed the staff to submit an AIS to set a public hearing. You held a public hearing on October 1st, 2018, and we're at 3 in the afternoon. I believe you didn't receive any public testimony. So it took a little while to come back with a proposed revision. In addition to the 15% change, there's also an addition on section 15.20.080, which states as follows: the apprentice utilization requirements on this chapter shall not apply to contracts for public works where the director determines the project is is the recipient of funding of which the source does not allow for such a program, and that relates to some of the federal programs. That's in addition to the ordinance you held a public hearing. Any questions on that?
Any questions on that?
Nope.
Nope. Yeah, we're on board with that one. 5B, contract award for a countywide guardrail.
For your consideration, Commissioners, is for you to award the contract to Peterson Brothers of Sumner, Washington, for the amount of $89,264.62, and also to consider an additional 10% to cover variations of the construction for a total of $95,991.08. This is phase one of the 2019 guardrail program that the Public Works conducts on a yearly basis, and they're planning to include guardrails on 2 locations. One along 183rd Avenue Southwest in Rochester, and the other locations will be along Independence Road Southwest along the Chehalis River. And this is funded by the road fund.
Thank you. Anything?
Nope.
Nope. Moving right along. 5C, contract award for Mullen Road. Carpenter.
Also for your consideration, Commissioners, for you to award the contract to ATEF Construction for the project of Mullen Road that goes from the Lacey city limits to Carpenter Road. The low bid amount was by Active Construction was $9,467,467.01, and the department is requesting for you to consider an additional 10% to cover for variations during the contract for a total award of $10,414,214. On October 2nd, 2019, the county received 13 bids for this particular project, and again, the low bidder was Active Construction. The funds how we're going to be covering this contract comes from the federal grant, the Surface Transportation Program, for $2 million. The state, the Transportation Improvement Board grant for $4,209,000. The City of Lacey is participating on this project with $1,983,849. And the county, using the road fund, will participate with $1,274,618. This project, you had a couple of briefings. The construction is going to take us a little close to 2 years because we need to maintain the road open during construction to local traffic. That is going to create a lot of delays to local citizens. The department has done an incredible job in reaching out to the communities as well as to the North Thurston School District just to make sure that we coordinate the efforts while we do improvements on this roadway.
Comments, questions?
Nope. We've been discussing this one all year. Good to see it.
In the 2 years, when you put it in perspective, it doesn't seem that bad, considering how long the Pierce County or DOT is taking with the I-5 through Tacoma project. It's never ending.
Right.
Agenda item number 6, County Manager.
Yes,
Comprehensive plan.
the Assistant County Manager will walk you through all the many different resolutions that you may need to adopt related to the budget adjustment for 2020.
So I'll just walk very quickly through these. Please stop me if you have any questions about them. The first item, A, is the adoption of the Comprehensive Plan Appendix G, which is our capital improvement program, also known as the CFP or Capital Facilities Plan. B is the 6-year Transportation Improvement Plan, the TIP. C is the cost allocation plan or indirect rates. D is the rates for equipment rental and repair, also known as ER&R. Item E is position control. This is the resolution that lists all changes to FTEs, creation of new positions, abolishing positions, or changing from, say, a half-time to full-time, or other similar changes in position control. Item F is the changes for setting salaries in the budget. These are midterm adjustments for salaries, including a cost of living increase in 2020. Item G is the midterm adjustments themselves in appropriations in your operating budget for each office and department. Item H are capital budget changes to keep the budget in line with the capital facilities plan and the TIP. And then item I establishes a new fund that will be used specifically for parks and trails to help us better account for funding for your parks and trails. And those are all related to passing the budget.
Anything?
Are these, timing-wise, is this necessary to be passed today, given that Commissioner Edwards isn't here?
We could delay this with no ill effect. The budget must be passed by the end of December. So there's a lot of time, but I'm just thinking about
I know there's pieces
if any
that,
officers or departments are relying on this funding being in place. 1 week would not hurt
It will
at
not
all.
because most of it will take effect at January 1st.
Yeah.
well, I mean, again, I don't want to speak for him. I don't think he had any, to my knowledge, I don't know that he had any issues, but I just wanted to ask the question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we could delay this.
we can
Fair
delay
question,
this.
yeah. I don't think there was any opposition to any of these things, but just out of respect.
It's kind of a big piece of
Yeah.
the,
Yeah, it
It
is.
is an important thing, and
That we're all
I do
responsible
prefer
for.
to have all three
And
commissioners.
that is a good point because during
Very good
your
point, thank you.
during your deliberations, there was a lot of discussions. And as you may recall, the vote on particular items, individual items, were a little bit different.
yeah.
And this reflects really the majority of the board wishes in some elements, and some others is just the majority of the board. And the way staff has structured all the different motions is just to give you the opportunity to express your perspective as to how the budget process has gone through. So that is a good point. We'll move this to next week, and I'm sure we'll manage that. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yep, that's fine.
All right, then we get into, the commissioners reporting in, and the county manager review our week, and then we adjourn. And then we get right into a public hearing at 3 o'clock, proposed amendment to the Thurston County Code.
Yeah, Commissioners, you have a public hearing this afternoon where you will be receiving public testimony related to proposed changes to the Thurston County Code 2.118.080, and that is related to the Citizens Commission and salary of elected officials. I briefly explained, what the function of the Salary Commission is here in the county, as well as some of the difficulties of having a quorum in place. This proposed amendment eliminates the requirement that at least 6 members have to vote before a recommendation goes to the Board of County Commissioners. What it does is just allows a quorum of the boards present that participate on those meetings. That is the only change that you will be considering this afternoon. I have for your consideration 2 motions. One is to close the public hearing, and depending on the public testimony, for your consideration will be for you to go ahead and adopt the ordinance, changing the scope.
Got it. Questions?
Well, one thing I don't think I fully understood until last week was that it's not only that if only 6 vote, it'd have to be unanimous. Like, it takes so essentially, it's a supermajority requirement, and we would be removing that.
Right.
And not only removing it, but also putting it to a simple majority of a quorum. And there are no elected officials who are new. Like Commissioner Edwards, he talks about, somebody getting a salary bump during their term. Everybody this year is serving a term. Nobody is a new elected official. So anyway, I'm going to be interested what the public has to say. I'm a little concerned about, it's more of a major change than I had realized by reducing the it's not just a process change, it's
based on the quorum.
It's a substantive change from a supermajority to a simple majority, and I have a little bit of pause about that at this point, but.
Robin?
I just have a couple of questions, if I may. If all the positions on this board were filled, there would be 10?
10,
10.
that's the 10.
So if you had a vote of 5, you'd be in a tie vote. Let's say everybody's there, and 5 vote yes, then 5 would be voting no. So it seems like 6 would be the only way to pass anything if you had 10 people there.
And that was the intent, but I guess it has been extremely difficult to
Keep all the positions
positions
filled.
open.
That's been the challenge.
You currently have
I
2
agree.
vacant positions, and the county is actively trying to recruit citizens who would like to participate on this board and many other boards that you have. In the item number 1 in your consent agenda is for you to consider removing 3 members, because although they have been appointed to serve in this board, they have not participated. So it creates an issue.
Right.
It creates an issue, and it creates, in a way, I don't want to call a sense of urgency, but a timeline associated with a potential recommendation of the Salary Commission that might be coming before you. Commissioner Edwards would like me to explore any other options as to how the board could probably, what options do you have really in terms of the Salary Commission? That will be something that I will be exploring for you next year.
Right. I was just trying to get to why 6 made sense whenever they passed it.
But if we had, like now we have 8, if let's say all 8 were showing up,
Then
you'd need 6 votes under the current scheme,
right,
and now we'd be changing that to where it would only take 5.
right.
So the proposal before you is a recommendation from staff. Based on the public testimony, you are in the position to introduce changes as you see appropriate. So please don't feel the proposal before you is the only option this afternoon. If you have the opportunity to give us some perspective as to how you would like to change the language after the public hearing, that's well within your purview.
Okay. And that's the end of the public hearing. That's the end of the agenda for for today. Now we're moving to the agenda for next week, November 5th. We'll call the meeting to order at 2 o'clock, and the Pledge of Allegiance, either led by Commissioner Messer or Commissioner Edwards. Approval of the agenda for the 5th and approval of the minutes for today. And we move into presentations. And the first one is a proclamation for Ira L. Cater with the VFW Post 318.
Yes, for your consideration is to proclaim November 8th as a special time to show appreciation for veterans of foreign wars. And in presence will be attending Ms. Amy Buckley. She is the post commander, as well as Walter Agnew, and he is a past commander of the post. Also, we will try to organize a color guard, a little event coming in. So that will be part of the presentation that will be before you next week. So we're expecting the color guard before you call for this particular item to come in and salute our flag.
Will that be the auxiliary, the VFW color guard?
Yeah, I believe
Not
so.
the
yeah.
sheriffs, okay. The VFWs, okay, good. Ty, any comments on this?
No.
Again, this is to commemorate the centennial, 100th anniversary. Next is a proclamation honoring for Honor and Empower for Zonta International.
Yeah, as far as I know, Ms. Pam Didloff is going to be attending the meeting, and she will be giving you a little perspective, but what this proclamation is all about.
Very good. Anything? Then we get into presentations. Public Works. Project of the Year Award.
Yeah. Also, there will be a presentation. Ms. Catherine Davis, she is the director of the Washington State Department of Transportation Local Programs. And Brian Diaz from the Olympic Region Local Programs, as well as from the state, will be coming to you to present an award of the Project of the Year Award for the improvements on Rich Road. In Rich Road, we completed those improvements. Increases the safety for drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists. And this particular project has been submitted for an award, and we just won. So DOT is going to come and actually present this award in front of the Board of County Commissioners.
Very nice. Anything?
No. it's
And
good.
Public Works staff will be present as well.
Well, of course. Yeah, thank you. Emergency Services, new emergency management employee is...
Yeah, Kurt Harding, your Emergency Services Director, will be introducing new staff. That will be Mike Presswood, Daphne Reeves, and Tabitha Lurd as part of the new staff. And he will provide you with a little bit of background to each of those new employees.
Very nice. Anything? Nope. Opportunity for the public to address the board.
Any comments that you may receive today, I will follow up if it needs a follow-up.
Okay, and number 2, county manager's update. Probably nothing just yet.
Not yet.
And number 3, consent items A, B, and C. The first one's a 1-year lease extension for the West Thurston Regional Fire Authority in Rochester.
Yeah, the Sheriff's Office has an existing lease of 120 square feet office space inside the West Thurston Regional Fire Authority located on 18720 Sargent Road, Southwest in Olympia, to support more efficient and responsive patrol operations in South County. This particular request is for you to consider a lease for 1 year for a total of $2,400 annually. That will be $200 a month. That includes utilities and all the expenses.
Okay, anything?
No. Sounds good.
And then 3B is the sheriff, a 1-year lease extension with Betchart Investments.
So the sheriff's office also has a lease space of 300 square feet located on 8410 30th Avenue Northeast, Suite A in Lacey, Washington. And again, to support more efficient and responsive patrol operations on East County. This particular request is for a lease of $3,600 annually, which translates to $300 a month, which include all the utilities and additional expenses.
Anything on that?
I had a chance to visit that location in my ride-along last week, so
How did it go?
it went fine. Good place to stop to go to the bathroom in the middle of a long shift, but I'm sure that that's useful to them. It's right up there in the
Going to the bathroom,
warehouse
yeah.
district, you know. So it's good.
Yeah. Now you want to be a deputy?
I'm good.
Yeah. I'm glad you did that, and they were appreciative of you doing that too. And I have nothing on that issue. So that takes us to 3C, the financial services voucher list, and we'll get to that next week. So we'll see it between then. Department items number 4 is Public Health and Social Services, Washington State HCA, Healthcare Authority, Community Prevention and Wellness Initiative.
Yeah, for your consideration, commissions to approve, again, the Washington State Health Care Authority Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery Community Prevention and Wellness Initiative for the fiscal year of July 1st, 2019 to June 30, 2021. for a total amount of $441,500. The Community Prevention and Wellness Initiative, the CPWI of the Washington State Healthcare Authority, HCA, provides resources and support to youth substance use prevention and communities across the state. In the first half of 2018, Thurston County Public Works and Social Services, Public Health and Social Services, became the contracted fiscal agent for 2 community coalition sites. The Bucota Tenino Health Action Team, also known as B-THAT, and Tumwater Hopes, and I can't remember what the Hopes acronym stands for. So this is somewhat of a renewal of those services. Again, the county is serving as the fiscal agent for that, and I don't believe there is any county dollars associated with this particular grant, but Chris Hawkins is here. If he can come, he can clarify that.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Chris.
Chris Hawkins, Program Manager with Thurston County Public Health and Social Services in the Division of Child, Family, and Community Wellness. And I won't be able to be here next Tuesday for this item. Liz Davis, our Division Director, will be here for the item. But I did want to clarify that this is the dollars that support the Be That Coalition in Tenino and the Tumwater Hopes Healthy Opportunities for Prevention and Education
That's where
in Tumwater. And there is a limit on the amount of indirect that the grant funding can support, so there is some amount that our department has to supply in terms of local funding to support these.
What is that, do you know?
coalitions.
What is it?
They cap it at 8% of the total value of the projects, so that amounts to something like 20% of our staff costs in indirects that we have to provide at the local level.
Any questions on that?
And the local match will come from what fund?
I would have to defer to our director on where that funding comes from.
Okay,
Can you say it in the microphone for me,
Public
Chris?
health assistance dollars.
Thank you.
thank you.
No, see programs for Be That and support that work, so glad to move it forward.
Very much so. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item number 5 is County Manager. We're going to be setting public hearing 5A and 5B.
First, on the county manager, you will hear all the resolutions again from the budget. So they will move to next
yeah,
week.
yeah.
So
Okay. Thank you.
those will be on your agenda for next week. On the current agenda, 5A is for you to consider setting a public hearing for November 26, 2019 at 3 in the afternoon. And this is for you to receive public testimony on the proposed revenue sources for the 2019-2020 budget. And also, we ask for you to waive the 20-day legal notice because of the time constraint associated with this action. And Robin can elaborate on that.
So state law requires that the board hold a public hearing on the revenue that's used to support the budget, specifically including property taxes, and any increase that the board's going to take action on to increase the levy. So part of our budget assumptions is the board will increase the levy by the full 1% that you may do as a councilmatic action. That will be part of the public hearing. And then you, by law, must do this, and you must certify the levy before the end of November. So since we are canceling the board meeting on the 19th, the week before, you'll be holding the public hearing on the 26th, and then I will also be asking you to take an action to certify the levy on the 26th.
Okay. Commissioner, any questions or comments?
On A, no.
So 5B, public hearing for the public records disclosure.
Yeah, Commissioners, for your consideration is for you to set a public hearing for December 3rd, 2019 at 3 in the afternoon in this room for you to consider public testimony related to proposed changes to Section 2.130.010, and that is related to the public records officer. In this particular action, staff is proposing to add a new chapter, that is the 2.130, and it really outlines the delegation of authority to the county manager to appoint a public records officer in the county. At this point, the Board of County Commissioners needs to take that action. I think this proposal may streamline that process. Also, what we include on this particular proposal is an appeal process in which any citizen can go through the appeals and also start consolidating all the many different elements of the public records law into this new chapter in the county code. That is in just the proposed changes before you. And Elizabeth is here to answer any questions of myself. And again, I will give you a copy of this proposed changes before the public hearing, so you're aware what the details of that is.
Okay. Fine.
Did you say creates an appeal process or amends
Yeah,
the
I
process?
think outlines, because that's required. And I can probably read what that is. Any person who objects to the county denials of a request for a public record subject to Chapter 42.56 of the RCW may petition for prompt review of such decision in accordance to RCW 42.56.520. It's really just consolidating all the state law related to public records into this new code. So there's no new.
Okay, I'll take a look at it.
Do you have any questions of Elizabeth? Do you have any questions of her?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't either. I'll take a look at that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. If I believe that's that. Then we have the Commissioner's report and the County Manager's review. And then we move into the Board of Health agenda for next week, November 5th. And we'll call that meeting to order thereabouts 3:30 in the afternoon, and approval of the agenda and approval of the minutes. And then we have a proclamation for Movember.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Shelley Slaughter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services and Administrator of the Board of Health. And with me,
Lydia Hodgkinson, Clerk of the Board of Health.
so yes, the first proclamation, or the only proclamation that you actually have this Board of Health is Movember. And Movember is an international movement to raise awareness of men's health around three key issues: prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and mental health and suicide prevention. So all of those issues affect men in Thurston County, many who suffer in silence, and by growing a mustache, people can raise awareness of the importance of men's health and encourage them to take action. And at this time, we are still trying to identify someone to accept the proclamation and provide some more information and speak to this proclamation.
Someone with a mustache.
Perhaps so.
And we've been doing this proclamation for a number of years now, haven't we?
Yes, you have.
Okay,
And you
comments,
all
questions?
have mustaches, so perfect.
I'm good.
Questions? No? Anything? Okay. Thank you. Now we move on to the opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health. Do you anticipate any action?
I am not aware of any.
Okay. And then we get into department items, number 4, that is Grow Smart, Grow Safe program.
Yes, Patrick Soderberg, our hazardous waste specialist, will present on the Grow Smart, Grow Safe program, which is a garden program that we have that advises people on what kind of products that they can use at home and in the community to better protect the environment and their health by providing alternative products that are less hazardous to people. And also, Patrick will be discussing our integrated pest management program in Thurston County.
Okay. Commissioner, anything?
No.
Nope. Me either. It takes us to agenda item number 5, vaping.
Yes, so as discussed at the last Board of Health meeting, Governor Jay Inslee had just declared an emergency related to vaping-related lung injury illnesses in Washington State. And the board had a series of questions, and we wanted to provide some information to the public on the dangers of vaping, share more information on the most recent health concerns, and answer any questions that you may have. So Kateri Winsett, our education and outreach specialist, who's our in-residence expert on this topic, will provide a information session on that.
Comments, questions?
No.
Terry does an excellent job.
Yes, she
presenting this
does.
topic. We have to ensure that Commissioner Edwards will be here for that. I mean, that's just really hot topic stuff now. And he had a lot of questions regarding that.
Yeah.
Agenda item number 6, we go into the our board health-related activities and health officers report. Will the doc be here?
Yes, Dr. Wood will be here, and she will be following up on anything from the vaping presentation, because that is something that we're monitoring on a daily basis. And then also we'll be discussing tuberculosis and E. coli cases.
Okay. Yeah, I saw her earlier. She absconded. And then the director's report.
Yes, and I will provide information about activities that our department has going on and share the good work that we're doing.
Perfect. Now we adjourn. Anything on Board of Health?
I don't think so. That's the
County
fifth.
manager?
No.
Assistant, okay.
3:30.
We're done with that.
Thank you.
Let's get right into the proclamations and awards. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you.
Good morning, La Bonita Bolmar, Clerk of the Board. I do not have any new proclamations or awards at this time. I am working with Josh Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, and Thomasina Cooper, Assistant to Commissioner Menzer, regarding the JBLM recognition of the service day that they have provided for Thurston County. And I'm not certain exactly what agenda that will be on at this time, possibly November 5th or November 12th. So they're still working on
Okay,
pulling that together.
all right.
I'd point out there are 2 proclamations for November 5th already.
Yes.
I like to keep it to a 2 proclamation limit
Yeah.
per
I'm
meeting.
working on that.
Thank you.
On boards and commissions, the first item on your list is for a reappointment of Eric Johnson. He has been a member of the Agriculture Advisory Board since July 2011 and would like to be considered for reappointment.
Is that this first time this has shown up?
Yes.
No, okay. And is there, and that's an open, we're still accepting other applications and?
Yes, we are.
And is there a time deadline to this issue?
This
Or
particular
filling it?
one is a reappointment. The deadline on accepting applications for the ones that have been on the plate, Citizens Commission on Salaries for Elected Officials, Timberland Regional Library Board of Trustees, and the Planning Commission, along with the Area Agency on Aging, ends at the end of October.
Okay, and I have just 2 more questions and I'll jump over. When does this term end? Do you know? Is it on here?
It is ending, no, it doesn't.
That's fine. You can
I can't
look-
remember right
We can
now.
get that later.
Yes.
And the final question I have is this a district-specific appointment or reappointment?
I don't believe-
District 3.
District.
Yeah, I know he's with District 3, but it doesn't tell me whether it's,
District specific.
I think it's
District
district
specific.
I thought it was
They do.
farmers and non-farmers.
They have farmers and non-farmers, but let me see if I
Sheets.
can get it for you real quickly. And as I look that up, I will like to go on to,
you can look it up later and bring it back to us. Because
Okay.
we're not going to decide that today anyway.
correct.
No.
One moment, I just lost something. Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
You asked my questions I had.
oh, okay.
The Citizens Commission on Salaries, we have received an application from Carrie Randall. It's a new application just received for your review.
So, given the timing issues that we have, if the board were to remove the 3 officers and if the board were to appoint Mr. or Ms. Randall, how fast would that have to happen in order to have that person be able to serve for this year?
If you decide to appoint this particular person, I can have it on your agenda, and then staff will send them information and get them in the queue for coming to the next meeting.
So if we appointed that person, let's say a week from today, when's the next time the Salary Commission meets?
I would-
No, I think it's in time, because the next meeting, I believe, is November 14. So I think if you consider appointing this person next week, it's still time.
Okay. Well, I mean, sometimes we kind of wait on these, but I'd like to.
Yeah.
I'd encourage the board to think on, and whatever due diligence you want to do, let's think about this person and potentially appoint them, since we're one shy of the minimum number to make a vote under current code.
Yeah, and that will give Commissioner Edwards an opportunity to review the application
Yes.
in the upcoming week.
Yep.
So what we will do for your consideration, adding this item for next week, and then at that point, you
need
will
to.
determine if you'd like to continue with the item or perhaps take it off.
Yeah, we
Sounds
will need to
good.
do that.
Thank you, I will do that. The next item is Timberland Regional Library Board of Trustees. We have Kathleen Varney, whose application is in your packet, but this morning, as we were in this meeting, I received an email from a Carolyn Newsom, who has submitted her application for this board. You don't have it in your packet. I just received it, today. So I will be making copies of it for you and making sure that you get that application.
That was Carolyn Newsom.
Carolyn Newsom with an Newsome last name.
Got it, thank you.
And Ms. Varney's new application too, right?
Yes.
I don't recall seeing that. Okay. Remind me, I feel like we ask the same questions every week, so I apologize, but are we working toward a certain timeline with the TRL appointment? Is there a certain
We were
necessity?
waiting on applications, to receive some applications. This Timberland would like to have that appointment made as soon as possible.
Okay, all right.
But this isn't the first time we've seen Kathleen, is it? I'm looking at the resume, her application, it
No.
looks very familiar.
No, this is the first time for Carolyn.
Right, but not for
Not for
Kathleen, okay. So we'll wait till next week again?
Yes, please.
Okay,
And then we'll also give Commissioner Edwards time to look at, and for you to look at the other application that we just received this morning.
all right, thank you.
The Planning Commission, you have seen Barry Halverson's Molly Carmody. The new one is Eric Casino, and on the notes here I have for you, he is currently a member of the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board. He was appointed January 2018, and his term on the Storm and Surface Water ends January 2021. He would like to be considered for the Planning Commission.
Okay. Again, once Commissioner Edwards returns.
The last one on my list.
And we only have one vacancy on the Planning Commission, correct?
That is
Just the
correct.
one,
Yes,
right?
non-district
Is
two.
yes, sir.
So now we have 3, and they're all from the right district. Mr. Casino is Commissioner District 2, yeah, okay.
And the Area Agency on Aging.
Judy Stratton, she's been on our list for a while. We were waiting because of them having meetings. And so I don't know if you're ready to go ahead with Ms. Stratton's appointment. I have not received any other applications or inquiries.
Did they have their meeting?
Yes, we were going to wait. We talked about this last week. We were going to wait because hoping that we would receive some other applications, and I have not at this time.
Okay, and
But they are in
Commissioner-
support of appointing her.
They are in support of, and
Yes.
Commissioner Edwards is assigned that board. And
Yes.
sits on that board, so I think we should wait for him.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe we can actually have an item for your consideration next week, and
Discuss
depending on
it.
the conversation at that point.
Yeah.
I'd like
Yeah,
to
I'm
keep it
ready
open.
to
That makes
move on
sense.
it.
You better move on with that.
So it's like
Okay,
that.
I'll have an AIS ready
It's sitting out.
for Ms. Stratton. That's all that I have. This
All
current
right.
application.
Thank you, La Benita. PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. I just have a couple brief updates for you. We have sat through 2 of the 3 website demos from the potential vendors for the new website redesign project. Our final one is on Monday. Then the core evaluation team will get together, review the feedback from the people who have participated in those demos, and make a recommendation. Not exactly sure how it all works, but we'll figure it out. I have the draft legislative priorities one-pager that we're going to be talking about today. We'll hopefully get that finalized and ready for the legislative breakfast. And then I'm also going to start working on the citizen budget book update this week. So we'll have that updated and available for any other public hearings that we have for budget and finalizing of it. We'll get it posted.
Very nice.
That's all I have for you.
Do you have anything for PIO, for Megan?
No, the Public Works folks were very happy with the Connections program.
Oh, good.
I had a chance to run into the group that we were interviewing. They seemed very pleased.
It was a good one, and to add on to that, I'm working with Thurston Talk right now. We're going to be doing a Thurston Talk article on fish passage projects, focusing on the awards that we've received, as well as kind of looking at it a year past. It's been a year, what kind of changes has happened in those environments since the opening of those culverts. So it should be an interesting read and get more out there about the awards that we're receiving.
Sounds good.
Very good. Anything further? Because I have nothing for you at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're just right on par. That takes us to the legislative update, but let's take a break now. It's 10:15. Let's take, it's 10:17, 10 minutes. We'll be in recess for 10 minutes. Thank you. We'll be back. All right, well, excuse me, welcome back. It's still October 29th, and we're coming to order. We're hitting the legislative update now, and the first is the Thurston County Legislative Update, and Megan had pointed out we have the 2020 legislative priorities sheet here. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Commissioners, thank you. You have, this is the draft legislative priorities for the county. And let me just walk you through each one of those. This is a reflection of the previous conversation that we had with the board. It includes the county financial sustainability and flexibility that is related to the tax revenues associated with the 1% cap. The next is seek ongoing reimbursement for judicial impact fees in Thurston County. And as you may recall, the state did allocate the judicial impact fees. However, it was a one-time only, so the intent is to have an ongoing. The next is retain a portion of the park impact fees for maintenance and operations. I'd like to pause on this item for a second. Deborah Manguia and I have started reaching out to some of the organizations and some of the industry representatives. And at this point, it's perhaps too much of a heavy lift for a short session. And you also receive a letter from the Olympia Master Builders Association opposing to this particular item. My suggestion for the board will be to eliminate this item for this legislative agenda and give staff some time to re-engineer the proposal and maybe bring that back on the next legislative session. That would be my recommendation at this point.
Can I ask a question about the letter we got? So there seemed to be sort of two issues, and the letter wasn't entirely clear to me what they were. So one of the issues was maintenance and operation of any park we want to use, or limited to the parks that we build for that with those impact fees in that area. I could understand that argument, but it wasn't clear to me whether our proposal was doing that or not.
So, and you're right, because when we met with the building industry representative, it was the same confusion I was able to clarify. The intent of this proposal was not to take the 20% of the park impact fees and just fund general M&O for parks. It was just for those facilities who were built using that fee.
Okay, and with that clarification, did that change their position at all?
It seems to be, it kind of softened, at least from my perspective, softened that perspective. But it came to realization to me that perhaps we need to step back, maybe engage the Washington State Association of Counties, WASAC, because this is a county-wide. I mean, statewide, all the counties could be affected by it, and perhaps some of the local jurisdictions could use this park impact fee as well. So I think considering this a short session, and again, my recommendation will be to give us some time to re-engineer this item and bring back again a year from now.
Yeah. Anything further?
No.
Do you agree with that?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
Will you reach back out to OMB and let them know?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you.
The next item is they create a new annexation method. That is a bill that was introduced last year, and this time around, the city of Lacey and the county is going to be supporting this legislation. Also, as part of the overall county supports, as part of the legislative session, will be to support adequate operational funding for local behavioral health facilities. Also, for the state to pay a fair share of all elections. Also, additional funding for culvert fish passage replacement. And also, we will be supporting any legislative actions addressing climate change strategies. That is the legislative agenda for you. With the suggested change that I will suggest to you, I'll take that out. And then if with your concurrence, I will just finalize this agenda.
I'm looking at
Unless you have any comments or any additions.
Any questions or comments?
I'm pretty pleased with this overall.
I'm looking at the support adequate funding, and no, it's not defined adequate funding. And the next sentence says the legislature needs to fund a complete behavioral health system. Is that just a softer way of saying it? Adequate, rather than completely fund it? Okay.
I welcome any suggestions of the language commissioner.
Yeah, because if we don't define adequate, it'll be defined for us.
Yeah, so if you have any particular suggestions, please let me know.
You pass it. Okay, we'll chat.
Yep.
Thank you.
So the next, if I may.
Yeah, please, I'm ready to move on.
The next item is the legislative breakfast, which is scheduled for October 12th, where you have invited the legislative delegation to participate in a breakfast. This is the yearly event that we have, where you have the opportunity to introduce this agenda to them, as well as you will like to hear from the delegation, their priorities for the upcoming session. WASAC is also going to be coming to provide you a perspective as to what this Washington State Association of County legislative priorities will be for the upcoming session. And so the draft agenda is here for your comment and review. So far, we have confirmed only two legislators who will be coming. That will be Senator Becker and Senator Hunt. And we have a no, Representative Wilcox. We have no from Representative DeVault. We have a no from Representative Dolan, and we have a no from Representative Dolio. And so it's going to be pretty slim pickings, and just the time of the year is complicated. So it begs the question whether we should have this event, because I don't think it will be productive if we have one or two delegates and we have 20 county representatives. So,
well, just as you started, I wrote down RSVPs to find out how many, and that's very disappointing.
yeah, and it's just the time of the year is complicated. But
Right. Any questions or comments? There's always value to it.
I
But to
agree.
go to this extent of having a full breakfast and such for these folks, if it's going to be that slim, I understand that. Right.
suggestion, give us another week to see additional confirmations, and maybe.
Yeah, how many more, there's Barkis, how many more folks do we not know?
So we don't know of Representative Barkis. We don't know of Senator Braun. We don't know of
Orca, is he one?
Orchid. Wilcox said no. Then we haven't heard from Senator Sheldon, Representative Griffey, and Representative McEwen is a no. Yeah.
McEwen
So
is
it's
a no.
maybe 4 or 5. They still have to confirm one way or the other.
I'm not feeling good about that, but.
Yeah, I'm just not feeling the love.
So
Yeah, I know it's the time of year. It's not sending a message.
give us how about give us until the end of this week.
Okay.
And we'll try to make
That's
get
fair.
a confirmation, and then you'll decide.
look at it if we need
But
to.
still, the legislative priorities still remain.
All right.
Okay.
Courthouse and Administrative Services public hearing.
Yeah, Commissioners, this is a follow-up to the public hearing that you received on the ordinance related to the courthouse and administrative services proposed building. In the ordinance in which you held a public hearing is for you to consider putting this ballot measure on the April 28, 2020 special election. Leading to the public hearing, which you held on October 22nd, 2019 at 5:30 in the afternoon, room 152. Leading to that public hearing, you received a written testimony of 8 in support, 8 in opposition, and also Mr. John Pettis submitted a petition of a no, including the addresses and names of 434 citizens. During your public hearing, you received public testimony of 17, which 11 were in opposition, 6 in support, and 1 was unsure what the position of the public comment was. So the next step in the process will be for you to have a formal vote on this particular ordinance. I will be bringing this item for your formal vote next Tuesday, November 5th, in the afternoon. And that will allow Commissioner Edwards to participate in that vote.
Of course. Okay.
You have a copy of this ordinance before you. This ordinance includes suggestions for your consideration to change the ordinance. And the first suggestion is on starts at the bottom of page 2. And is highlighted in red. And let me start by on the last sentence of the last paragraph on page 2. It states the board shall determine the exact extent of the specification for construction of structures or other improvements. The proposed addition for your consideration includes once completion of the improvements are duly provided for for the project. Levy proceeds may be used for other purposes as the board may determine after holding a public hearing. And the other suggested language for you is on page 3, item B. That adds on the last sentence of that paragraph or other government purposes, as the board may determine after a public hearing. So I would like probably for the board to consider those suggestions, and the intent of those suggestions is to allow the board to have more flexibility related to the revenues that perhaps you may, if this is passed by the board. So Robin can explain a little more in detail.
So I apologize because when you were considering changes to this resolution in preparation for the public hearing, I was not here. The first change that I'm proposing that you make to this ordinance is on the should we build a new structure? If we build something new, then of course the levy would be used to pay the bonds. That is our primary purpose of raising this levy. But there may be years when the amount collected is more than you need to pay the bond. And one of the things about government bonds, general obligation bonds, that's a little different than paying a home mortgage is you can't pay ahead. So like in a home mortgage, you can add a little to it or make a double payment and pay it off early. But government general obligation bonds are issued in such a way that they're structured, you can only pay X amount each year. You can't pay in advance unless there's a clause in that, you know, in year 10 they become refundable or some such thing. So what I've proposed here is if there's enough money to make the bond payment and we have a reserve for future bond payments in the event of an economic downturn, then the board would have the opportunity to take the excess money and spend it on some other thing the county needs, subject to a budget hearing. That's what this first item means.
Subject to a budget hearing or a public hearing?
Public hearing.
After,
hearing.
you would hold a public hearing,
Got it.
and then you'd have to put it in your budget. I mean, there's no way to have an expenditure without a budget amendment. So it would be subject to a public hearing. But that's what it means when it says, if the improvements are duly provided for, then you could take the excess money and use it for other purposes. On page 3, when I put in this "or other government purposes," I was not clear on what the intent is, but now I think that your intent here is, if we're not able to build new, we would use this money for remodeling, spot checking, where you do a little construction, you're able to alleviate some of the pressures that we had today that would be resolved by a new courthouse, but perhaps for some reason we can't build a new courthouse. So when I put in other government purposes, that is to enable you to, again, use the excess money. Should this levy pass, we would be collecting up to about $16 million a year. So the way you would choose to use those funds, again, we couldn't pay down bonds, payment of principal or interest on bonds, because you can't pay those early. It just makes more sense to say you could take those excess revenues and use them for other purposes. So this language may need to be finessed, if you will, so that it's not so broad. I understand that it's probably much too broad, but I'm trying to get toward the board being able, once you provide for the space needs of the county, to use those funds in other ways.
Go ahead.
So I understand the intent, and I'm probably okay with the first piece of it because it's sort of but the part B, capital improvements may be too narrow, but other government purposes for my...
Too broad.
It's too broad.
Yep.
I think when I was kind of advocating for this originally, it was to make sure that we were using it on, our facilities. We're criticized for not having enough maintaining the facilities, building facilities, dealing with the capital facility needs of the Thurston County. And there's plenty of need there, so I don't think that's too limiting, because that's, we know with all the buildings we have and the maintenance we need, whatever we build is, cost to maintain it, or as we've seen through this process of analysis, is going to be substantial. So I don't know the exact wording, but to me, to just say other government purposes just kind of takes us right back to where we started when I was advocating for some guardrails on that.
I understand. So what would you think about capital improvement?
To give Commissioner Hutchins the
Oh,
opportunity.
I'm so sorry.
That's great. And I'm glad you addressed it, because I'd already written down where it says new courthouse, if that negated what we're talking about, should this be remodeled or refurbished? So,
Right.
but you addressed that, so thank you for that. And did you want to wordsmith this now, or do you want to just take advice from us? I'm sure you'll get some feedback from Commissioner Edwards as well for potential wording.
I think considering the nature of the conversation, I think it will be good if we spend some time. I left enough time on the agenda today,
Okay.
specifically for this purpose, because I think it will be good to have that conversation while everybody is listening.
Well, then I agree with Ty when he says, and as you said, other purposes looks distrustful and nefarious. And maybe I'm channeling my other seatmate, I don't know. But it's just way too broad.
So what if we change this, it says, may proceeds of the levy to improvements, to other capital improvements, payment of principal interest on bonds, which we won't be able to do, but what about and maintenance of facilities?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that addresses exactly
And
what you're
get rid of
talking
other
about.
government purposes. And
Yep.
I think I'd be fine
If
with
you
that.
substitute and maintenance of facilities, what do you
Commissioner
think?
Hutchins, what do you think about that suggestion?
Would you read that one more time? I wrote down in maintenance of facility.
Right. So, shall not be, may apply levy proceeds or any portion thereof to other portions of the improvements, to other capital improvements, to payment of principal or interest on the bonds, or to maintenance of county facilities,
Yeah.
as the board may determine after holding.
I think, because I wrote down the word specific instead of other, and that specifies,
Right,
that gives it specificity. So I'm happy with that.
okay.
Okay, so let me see if I can wrap this. So I will bring this item for your formal vote in consideration next Tuesday, November 5th, during your regular board meeting. And the ordinance will include those two additions. One is the language as presented to you on the beginning on the bottom of page 2, last paragraph, which the suggestions is to add at the end of that paragraph, once completion of the improvements are duly provided for, levy proceeds may be used for other purposes as the board may determine after a public hearing. And paragraph B of page 3, on the last sentence, we will add, and I'm going to start on to other capital improvements or to payments of principal or for interest of the bonds or to or for maintenance of county facilities, as the board may determine after
After a
public
public
hearing.
hearing.
Yeah.
I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it. And you have enough information then to pass it on to Commissioner Evans? Okay, thank you.
So you will see this on your agenda next Tuesday afternoon.
All right,
Are we moving on?
I don't have to.
I'm just asking. Is that the,
I'm sorry, what?
are we moving
moving on.
off
Do you
this
have more to
topic?
add?
No, you can continue our conversation.
Okay. Well, because we never really had a chance to discuss anything after the
No,
public hearing.
this is what staff wanted to bring to your attention.
Do you have more to add?
Well, obviously, we got a lot of input on this question, and I just thought that there was a lot of angles of concern related to the date, related to the location, related to this, different pieces of it. My position has always been that the need is apparent. The county commission spent a lot of the taxpayers' money, I think over $500,000 in studies and development of a proposal. There was plenty of chances to influence the direction of that along the way, but I got to office in January and a proposal was all wrapped up in a binder with a lot of work and thought that went into it and went behind it. And it's always been my position that the kind of what John Thunheim said at the end of the meeting, it's just the public can vote on this. I understand arguments on both sides. Some people can't afford it, some people can. But this proposal is something that the public has paid for, and they deserve a right to cast their vote on. The date, I guess the reason I just want to throw this out here is just that if somebody wanted to, I'm looking at my seatmate who's here and my seatmate who's not here, if somebody wanted to try to convince me to put it on the August ballot, because I advocated for April just because we had the study that said there was a lot of lack of information, and I knew we would have to heavy lift to educate the people about the need for the project. What I didn't realize at that time is that then there would become a flood of what I consider misinformation about the, and so now we're not only fighting lack of information, but we're fighting a lot of misinformation, and the public has brought up concerns about, it's going to cost us a lot of money to do it in April. I didn't know if something else would appear on the ballot. August is a time that, a lot of things would be on the ballot. Hopefully voter turnout would be increased, which is what folks wanted. Hopefully it would cost the county less to do the election, which is great. And it would, so anyway, I'm willing to have that discussion. I'm not willing to go beyond that, and I'm not willing to not put this to the voters but I just wanted to throw that idea out there because it's just something that I've been thinking about since the public hearing. We haven't had a chance to discuss it. If you guys don't agree with that, that's fine. I could go with April, but if the board felt August was better, I'm certainly willing to have that conversation.
Well, I'll tell you. You're right. John Thunheim put it very succinctly by commenting, and he happened to be like the last speaker. And he said, as you can hear how divisive this topic is, it commands and demands of the public vote. Let the people decide. And I'm not going to get in the way of the democratic process. I'm not going to force it on anybody. They can choose. Give them the choice. So I'm okay with the ballot. I'm still okay with April. I hadn't thought of moving it to August. That would merit quite a bit of discussion, including Gary. But I hadn't thought of that. But I'm still okay with keeping it on April. And you bring up a good point about we're battling not enough sufficient information getting out and misinformation, but there's a sufficient amount of disinformation going out as well. And I was in Costco minding my own business yesterday afternoon, and one of my former colleagues from Olympia stopped me and he said, hey Hutch, I want to ask you a question about this courthouse. And I hate to do it in Costco on your own time. I said, it's never my own time. So we spent about 20 minutes, maybe 30, chatting about all kinds of stuff. And I actually pulled out my phone and brought up the county website. Here's what it's going to cost you, approximately what it'll cost you. And he said, was that all? I keep hearing it's going to raise all of our taxes 38% or whatever, but that's not true. I said, no, here's what the budget is. I explained it, and he said, well, you haven't convinced me, but you've convinced me to not be against it. I'm going to have to give it a real good thing. A real good thing. So that was a win, because he just didn't know. And then I went down another few aisles, and an elderly woman stopped me, and she said, I heard you talk about the courthouse. Do you know about this? And I said, well, yeah, I do. She said, well, number one, I like your tie and your shirt combination. That's she was flattering about, and I said, it's kind of a weird day. And, but then she said, I'm supporting it. I support the courthouse and blah, blah, blah because of the need. And she's not a county employee. I have no idea who she is. So it is divisive, and people need to have a vote and a say, but we're battling that information, the upfront information, the factual versus the disinformation or misinformation getting out there. And so it's a heavy lift. But my concern was, and it's not a concern, why is it a concern? Since this new ordinance removes Plum Street as a specific site-specific to give us flexibility on where this might go, what would be the process for determining then where it will go? What we will do, whether we stay here or move west side, 8th and Plum, what would be the process for that? That's what I didn't have in my head.
So the board can always ask the staff to bring those 3 top locations and the information behind that for you to have another conversation if that's what you're asking. Certainly, it is up to the board as to how staff can present that information for you to go back to the decisions that you made. And again, the intent of removing is to provide the board as much flexibility on this ordinance as well as not just on the location, the funding, and everything else associated with this measure. That is the intent of staff. But the board can direct the staff to bring any information that you need, would like to revisit the decision-making process of the site. What I do not recommend is to go back to
No.
assessment of all the 12 sites.
No, because we started here,
Because
got it down, got it down.
that cost us time and effort. But certainly, if you like for staff to come back and refresh the elements associated with each of the 3 sites, that will be the Plum Street, the current courthouse here at the Hill, or the west side, we can certainly do that at any time you would like us to do so.
I would think at the very least that would be helpful, just refreshing the 3. We got it down to 3, and after considerable input and work, staff work as well, that a refresher of those 3 sites, the advantages and disadvantages that each bring
So
would be helpful.
That's good. So I will organize a briefing go back to the 3 sites and some of the pros and cons from each one of them. The question that I ask is the board holding your formal action on this ordinance pending that additional briefing or not?
No, not me, no. Not the location, no.
Okay.
Can you remind?
So it's a little bit parallel process that you'd like
Right.
to, okay.
Can you remind folks and myself who wasn't here how the 12 got to 3? Like, did the board set criteria and the criteria determine, or did the board vote among the 12? I don't remember how we got from 12 to 3.
So the it takes you back maybe over 2 years ago or so. The board, we have the board selected somewhat of a subcommittee at that time. And the subcommittee met on a couple of occasions to look at technical criteria as to how we can vet any particular site. And that criteria was moved forward to the commissioners at that time. And you weigh in whether that criteria is adequate or not. That was agreed upon, approved by the commission at that time, that criteria. And then the staff went on and they started looking at so many different sites, really, including a couple sites outside of the of the city of Olympia, one in the UGA. One of the criteria, for instance, by law, needs to be within the municipal boundaries of the city of Olympia. So those sites just fill off the selection criteria. And then included criteria of transit access, pedestrian access, all that. It was mainly technical related criteria. So as a result of that, there were 12 sites, it was reduced to 3. Those 3 sites were presented to the commissioners, and at that point the commissioners agreed to embark on a feasibility study of those 3 sites to start getting narrowed down in more specifics in terms of the cost, in terms of the alternatives, and that's what you saw from early in the year. I believe there was several displays in this room, which each of the sites, the Plum Street again, the current courthouse and the west side, each one of those had a little bit of options within, taller buildings, a little more flat buildings. And here on the courthouse, it had the most options, including building across the street, several faces, including a parking lot in this side. So it was so many different options. And at that point, the board did not pick on a particular option for each of the sites. The board decided what is the most feasible site. So there was not really when you exercise your decision-making process on the site, you determined that perhaps the Plum Street was the most suitable site for that, for the courthouse, and that's how we staff embark on the next steps of the process. But really, at least from my point of view, there was not a binding decision related to the Plum Street site. The board exercise, it was just more of a process moving forward, and that's how the cost estimate came to be. And again, high-level cost estimate, planning level cost estimate. So going back to the suggestion of Commissioner Hutchins' suggestion, we can bring all that criteria again. We can bring all the displays again for you to refresh that memory.
My question was, at the moment when 12 became 3, and you were going to explore options on Plum, West Side, and Hilltop, could the board have said, no, I don't want to explore Plum, I don't want to explore West Side, even though the criteria might have suggested that, I'm not interested in that site? Could the board have done, I don't know what your process was.
They could have, but I believe at that point, the board wanted to, stop on the top three and said, okay, now let's go through this feasibility study to gather more information before when a decision. Certainly, the board could have said at that point, I don't want to include any particular side of the top three. That was part of it could be the preview of the board, but that conversation didn't occur at the strengths.
And I would imagine we still have comments from the public on the various sites that have come in to the county. For example, when we had the three, what it seemed to, as I recall, focus on was each had amenities, each had some really good positives and some. And for example, I think the Hilltop was a 5-year process. Olympia and the West Side, Plum Street and the West Side were like a 2-year process. And then, but there's no off-ramp on the west side. Neighborhoods on the west side were saying, we don't want a government building out here. So those things kind of weighed in. We didn't have a partner with anybody, but Plum Street propped up a partner with Olympia.
Yep.
So it was a regional partnership. So that kind of added to the flavor of the Plum Street site. So there was those types of things that kind of narrowed it down at that point. But I would love to have another, and especially for Commissioner Menser's benefit, another, here's the criteria.
I think at the beginning of the year was a lot of information.
Bus routes, amenities for the staff, and what it brings to the community wherever it goes. Those types of things would be very beneficial for you.
Yep. So what I'm hearing is I will organize a briefing, again, to go back to the information provided to you related to the 3 potential locations of this project. And I will bring this item for you for next Tuesday, November 5th, with the revisions that we outlined for you. And maybe when you review the agenda for November 5th, next Tuesday morning, maybe you can have a conversation among yourselves whether the April 28th, 2020 is a date that you would like to continue to consider as part of the ordinance or another date. So
that's what I was going to circle back to, because that was the first thing you asked.
So
or brought up was August.
That is the process
Okay.
that I'm proposing for you moving forward.
Perfect. Very good.
Okay.
You okay?
Yep.
I'm glad you brought that up. A good discussion, especially after last week's public hearing. Commissioner items, settlement of civil penalties. Good morning, Josh, and thank you.
Good morning, thank you.
Go right ahead.
Your director of CPED requested to come to the board and give you a perspective related to civil penalties associated with Title 26. And I believe he's going to walk you through as to some suggestions that he would like to bring in front of the board.
Thank you, County Manager. Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, CPED. With me here also is Brett Burris, Manager with CPED in the Development Services Division. So one of the things that we continue to look for within CPED is ways to improve customer service and value honor the values of transparency, consistency, and accountability. And one of those is consistency in the way that we provide refunds to folks that follow through the compliance pathway. And if you see, there's a memo that was provided by Brett Burris. This is the paper that I'm referring to. Brett came up with the concept of utilizing the code and ordinance that we already have in place in Title 26, as well as the direction of the Board of County Commissioners to assist in customer service. We'd had a briefing on the compliance topics a few months ago, and one of the questions was, when people do whatever they're supposed to do, what do we do next, essentially? And if you see at the very top there, it kind of does the timeline of how a compliance process works. It starts with an investigation, then moves on to a notice of violation, then civil penalties, and then prosecuting attorney's office referral. And so this is one of those items like when a neighbor calls on another neighbor and says, you're violating this code. We go out and investigate. We do see that there is a code problem. We provide an NOV, the notice of violation, If they don't fix it, that next step is civil penalties. So we assess a penalty. Brett's concept is, at that moment, when we assess civil penalties, if they take the action within a certain amount of time, which is listed in here, to remedy all of the penalties, we will then remedy all the violations, we'll then waive the penalties, the fees. That's within code and ordinance. It exists within Title 26. I think it's a good path. The director, me, I have the authority to do that. But before I took those actions, I wanted to make sure and inform the Board of County Commissioners that this is a success as directed by this board to take this action. The one piece that I would ask for guidance, within the code and ordinance, it states that the director shall periodically report such settlements and compromises to the board. Our suggestion is that periodic update happens annually with the compliance periodic update. And so just kind of a big picture story about success and a great, I think, detailed honoring of our community planning manager, Brett Burris, and trying to find one of those action items that helps that process. So it's kind of a convoluted story, but I'm open to any questions, and so is Brett.
So what's italicized is
Yeah,
something
so what's
new?
new? What's different? The
So nothing is actually new.
You're saying it's already within code?
This is all within authority and direction. We're just talking about doing it. And so the only thing that we want to say, the only thing that we want to check in on is how often would you like us to provide the periodic updates of these successes, of the settlement, the waiving of the penalties. And we're suggesting every year that it coincides with the compliance update as well. I know it's hard. After big topics of lots of decisions, there's not much decision here for you. This is just a story of success, really.
Okay.
Cracks me up.
Well, while you're thinking, I have a question. And I know you can explain it to me. At the very bottom, the last paragraph, in an effort to promote transparency, consistency, accountability, right? See all that? And then the bullets, the second bullet, it removes the case-by-case review of requests for settlement.
Yep, and that's, actually, I'll let Brett answer that.
And because you can address it for me in this regard. As I was trained many years ago as a supervisor, the most unequal thing you can do is treat everybody equally. Because if you come in late one day and I give you a day off, that's not fair because somebody else has come in 15 times and they don't get a day off. So if you have one policy, you're late one day, you set the standard for conduct, you set the standard for an action. We remove that case-by-case flexibility or discretion, use of discretion. And I saw this example a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I'm going to give everybody in my family a 10-speed bicycle. So no matter what the age, if I've got a 4-year-old and they get a 10-speed bike, it's equal, but it's inequitable. They can't use it. So it removes the discretion. So by seeing that it removes case-by-case review, tell me why that's positive.
Title 26 promotes cooperative compliance as it relates to abating violations. Oftentimes, after the NOV and the civil penalties start, the abatement process actually takes place. That being said, the case-by-case that we're referring to here is that if a violation is abated, it is a requirement of the violator to present a request to our director to waive civil penalties. And the case-by-case basis is not to judge the severity of the violation, but just to make note that the violation has been abated. In addition to that, in order to finalize the civil penalties, the process is for is to go to the hearing examiner at a $400 charge assessed towards us. And so it saves us time, saves us money, reduces the case-by-case as long as cooperative compliance is maintained. And so this achieves our goal of abatement and compliance cooperatively in an attempt to then waive the civil penalties.
Okay.
And so it's a lot about timing. So it takes out the inconsistency in the timing. So if they abate, which means they take care of the issues between the civil penalty stage, but before we refer it to the prosecuting attorney's office, That's the consistency, that if they've done all the things they need to do, the director will waive those penalties. Before, in the term of timing, we haven't really had a standard, a policy within our own group of when we're going to waive those fees. So it's not so much, as Brett said, the severity of the case, it's that A, they take care of all the problems, and B, it's before we've had to refer it to the PAO's office. And so that's the case by case that we're removing, that it's the timing piece of it, that we're working for consistency.
Okay, Robin?
I was just curious if our code gives authority to the director to settle claims, then why does this go to the hearings examiner?
That is an excellent question. I wasn't a part of the Title 26 when it was drafted. What I do know is that the finalization of the fees is through the hearing examiner. I'm assuming it's an attempt to have a third-party review in order to assess the code compliance case in association with the civil penalties that's been assessed. Civil penalties, in case you don't know, are assessed at $500 per day per violation. And so the finalization of it would be the responsibility of the violator to present to the hearing examiner their case for a reduction in fees. The process, unfortunately, is what it is with the hearing examiner.
But if the fines were, it says any penalty in excess of 2 days, which would be $1,000, right?
I don't
But
know.
if the director were eliminating the penalty, then it wouldn't be $1,000.
In that case, so you're right on, so there would be no reason for the applicant to go to the hearings examiner.
Right.
So they wouldn't, and so
Under
they're,
today's. So this would only apply if the director were not eliminating
there
the
you go.
penalty.
Exactly, they'd have a reason to
Only-
try and fight it at the hearings examiner stage.
Right.
But
And
we've got.
We wouldn't want to eliminate that.
Correct, it's another avenue in case, so what we're trying to do is use the process that we have to eliminate those inconsistencies and serve the customers. So if they get rid of all of the violations, what good is it for us to continue to try and
Right.
push them? So I know it's tough after so many big issues. This one is, it's a good thing.
Commissioner Menser?
It sounds like under current practice, a request could be made at any point in the process to waive, and whereas now, if I'm understanding you right, we're loading it so that there's a big incentive to get it done earlier because they can get the big carrot of
You got it.
complete waiver if it's done before we have to move into the legal process.
Exactly.
At that point, they lose that ability to get a waiver.
Yep, thank
Yeah,
you.
So I think that makes sense to me.
And so does the annual update on
Yeah, that's what,
sound okay?
yeah,
You're so funny.
yep.
Okay.
Got it, okay.
So I just wanted, I know this is, it's complicated, but it's all lined out there, and I just wanted to say thank you to Brett Burris for continuing to bring these opportunities for efficiency and customer service to our attention.
Woo-hoo.
All right.
Thank you, Brett.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Squaxin Island Tribe request.
Yeah, the last item that I have for you is bring back this item that you discussed last week. And there was a Commissioner Menson received a request from the Squaxin Island Tribe to see if the Board of County Commissioners may support a particular a property located in Mason County to move it from fee simple to a trust. You had a conversation last week initially where perhaps you may want to remain neutral on this request. Commissioner Menser requested for him to reach out to the fellow commissioners in Mason County. I believe he did, and he wants to bring that information back to you.
Perfect, thank you.
So I asked Kevin Schutte, I said, basically, I've been asked to do this, and if you were in favor of it, I'd be inclined to support you. It's your county, and Squaxin Island Tribe made a reasonable request. If you were not in favor of it, I'd be inclined to stay neutral based on this discussion of our board. He said that they're in favor, and in fact, 2 of their commissioners, sounded like not as a commission, but Kevin Schutte and Sharon Trask have both written letters of support. So that changed my thinking about it. I'm going to, either if the board doesn't want to, I'm going to sign a letter of support as an individual commissioner based on those representations, but I just wanted to bring that back in case that changed the board's mind about supporting it.
What did the third commissioner, what was the opinion?
You know, Kevin didn't say. He didn't say there was any opposition. I can actually read his response. He said, no issues on my, I said, I wanted to know your board's position. He said, no issues on my end. Commissioner Trask and I are signing a letter for the application as well. Thanks for checking. He just didn't say about it. Randy Netherland, I believe, is their third commissioner. He just didn't say.
And advantages or disadvantages of us, whether we support or remain neutral?
And for me, as you may recall, my suggestion to the board to remain neutral, it was not necessarily related to this particular request, this particular property. It's more of the principle of supporting an action by a tribe moving property into trust. When, for instance, the Chehalis tribe, for the most part, in Thurston County, puts property into trust and submits an application to the Department of Interior, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, there's a very prescriptive process where we receive that notification, and the Department of Interior asks us to give a perspective as to the impacts of this particular property going to trust. Because as soon as going to trust, there is no property taxes, there are no sales tax on those activities. So which we provide that information to the Department of Interior as part of that process that I'm describing. To my knowledge, I have been involved in providing that information for many, many years. None of those applications have been rejected, plain and simple. So the suggestion from my point of view, from the board, is to remain neutral, is where the board is going to put yourself in supporting or not a particular application down the road. And that is probably the next steps if the board decides to support this specific request. You may be in the position to weigh in on every single request, not necessarily from the Squaxin Island, perhaps from the other one, aside from the process that I just described.
That puts in my head, then I'm deciding winners and losers. Whom am I going to support and or not, and then having to defend why. And as I recall, when we discussed this last week, the question that Gary, or maybe you had, we didn't know the size of the property or the intended use. Because some of it was shellfish, I believe, or aquatic. But there was a large parcel it looked like that wasn't, but I don't recall the size of the property, what the intended use.
Yeah, I don't have the size of the property.
But it was all in Mason County.
But it's all in Mason County.
Yeah. Okay, and I know Gary will want to, Commissioner Edwards will really want to weigh in on this one way or the other. So that doesn't prevent you from doing something on your own, but I'll wait and hear what his thoughts and opinions are before I decide what I do. Yeah, it would have greater impact if we decided to do it as a board, but if we're not deciding that way in a board, then we can do it on our own. Mm-hmm. So we can bring this back next week?
If you like.
Is that right?
That sounds good. That's why I was waiting.
Perfect. Thank you for following up on that too, with Mason. Public testimony?
I have no.
Nothing? Commissioner items? Have you a commissioner item?
I don't think so. There was a JASCOM item, but I was going to save that for Thursday, that when we specifically talk about our boards and commissions. So as far as county commissioner items, I don't have anything.
And the only one I brought, or was going to bring up, was the letter from OMB, and we already addressed that with the legislative update.
Right.
So I'm done.
What?
Do you have anything for the good of the order?
No, I'm good, Commissioner.
Anything further? Well, then we're adjourned until 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Yep.
Thank you.